And we are live. You're watching another episode of the Detective Diaries. I am your host, Greg Lawson. This is where I interview strange and interesting people I find along my paranormal journey. Last week, we talked with Brad Blair. Brad is the one of the founding members of MI Paracon and an author and all-around cool guy. He is also a part of Creaking Door podcast, and if you've never listened to Creaking Door, you should tune into that. And I've spent a lot of time with Brad up in Michigan, and got to spend a little bit of time with this next guest up in Michigan also. But before we go, let's see what our next guest, Seth Breedlove, actually does.
I've read and collected several newspaper articles from the late 60s, early 70s. I've talked to people that were still seeing whatever this thing was in the TNT area. And it was well after 1966, 67.
Some people describe the wings as looking like bat wings. Some describe him as having feathers. He looked flesh and blood, but yet his eyes looked electrical.
By the time I sat up to look out the window, because I thought whatever this was going to fly right into the window, the wingspan of this covered the windows.
I almost get the feeling that once it was suggested in the movie that people had seen the Mothman at Chernobyl, I think it became sort of part of urban legend.
It kind of stands up a little bit and puts out what I assumed were wings, arms, something. And they reached almost the side of the road.
So I immediately woke up, and when I did, there was this figure standing beside the bed.
All right, man. That's so that's a little bit of what Seth does. Seth is a filmmaker. He is a cryptozoologist. He is all kinds of things. Let's go ahead and bring him in here, and that way I can shut the heck up and we can see how all this is going to work. Can you hear me, Seth?
Yep, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Cool, man. Thank you so much for taking the time out to do this. I know that just based on your schedule, you're busy and a creative person, so you always have something going on, and I really appreciate you coming on to do this with me.
Yeah, thanks for having me, man. Anytime.
Anytime? Are you sure about that?
Literally anytime.
So you and I met in Ohio, right?
Yeah, so we met at the Kent stage.
Kent stage.
Yeah, and I don't remember what year that was. Was that 2017, 2018?
Probably 2017, I think, but I bet Lynn will know and she'll chime in here a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. So I had seen some of your stuff prior to that, and I mainly online. And when I saw that you were going to be there, I was, fanboying and all that stuff. It was great. Your talk there was fantastic. You did a viewing of, I can't remember do you remember which one it was?
No, because I've done that. I did that event 3 years. I think it would have, yeah, I don't know. I think it might have been, Flatwoods is the one that I was thinking it was. Because I can't remember. I honestly don't remember.
Well, anyway, you did a question and answer afterwards,
Yeah.
And I think it was the highlight of the whole weekend, in my opinion. I thought it was fantastic. It was fun.
Oh, cool. Yeah, I don't. Was that the year that the Astonishing Legends guys were there too? Or was
Yes.
that?
Yeah.
Okay, okay, yeah,
And those guys are fantastic.
yeah, and that event was when I first met them as well. So that Kent Stage event was fun that year. I mean, that was like a good time, and that place is pretty cool anyway. It's like a
Yeah.
weird like
Yeah.
haunted.
Dweezil Zappa was playing the day after we were out of there, right? Did you see that?
No, I know that they've had some like crazy
Yeah.
talented popular musicians there over the years though.
Yeah. Kent Stage is really cool. One of the things that spurred me to give you a call to see if you would do this is I was listening to Monstropolis that you do, and a friend of mine, Dr. Shea, a friend of yours, Dr. Shea Steingast, was on there, and y'all were discussing sea monsters.
Yeah. Yeah, anytime I can dive into that topic, I'll take the opportunity. If no other reason than like most of this stuff, like the paranormal stuff, my wife, subject matter wise, is not super into, but like lake monsters and sea monsters, she like really gets into. So I'm mostly doing that to give her something to tune into. But I'm also, and it's like one of those things that I'm really curious about. And this is what, okay, so like I never get to hear, I honestly don't think in person I've ever had anyone tell me like any sort of like aquatic based monster story except for you. And this was like 1 year ago or whatever, and that was that weird, like, I can't even describe what you told me, so you're gonna have to tell the story now.
Okay, so for what it's worth, I'm assuming it was something naturally occurring, and that it was. I don't know what it was. I never really got a good look at it, but myself and another diver, when I was in the Army, I was up in Alaska, and we were with ASAP, Arctic Subarctic Aquatic Pararescue up there, and myself and another diver took a Coast Guard boat out. A Coast Guard boat was going out to do a patrol, and we asked if they could take us to this particular island out from the town of Seward in Seward Bay, Resurrection Bay, I think it's called. And there is an island further out there that if you look at it like Google Earth or whatever, it's kind of a half horseshoe. So it was probably a volcanic mount there, and it's very deep in that area. But right in that mount, it's not that deep, maybe 60 feet or something like that. And so the Coast Guard boat took us out there and dumped us off. We were going to dive there. Our dive was probably going to be, less than 60 minutes. And then we were going to hang around and wait for them to come back. We were using dry suits and stuff, so we were warm. And so as they're leaving out of the bay, we start descending. And as we start getting toward the bottom, which I want to say it wasn't very deep. It was 40, 50 feet deep, something like that. The whole bottom of this little area, this like lagoon, the whole bottom started rippling like this. And it's kicking up all the muck and the mud and everything like that. And it started going toward the mouth of the opening on this little bay. And needless to say, like I said, we were at maybe 40, 50 feet. I don't know. And I didn't even try to kick my way to the surface. I just blew my BC and exhaled and just, inflated and went as fast to the surface as I could. And the guy I was with did the same thing. And we're yelling and hollering, for the boat to come back. And they saw us and they came back around. They picked us up, and that was it. I didn't.
Have you told that story to Shay? I'm assuming.
I don't know whether I've talked to her about that. I'm going to guess that her response would be that it was probably a really, really, really large halibut, maybe a 300-400 pound halibut or something.
Yeah.
But halibut is typically much deeper. They're not in a shallow area like that. I guess they could be. They can go wherever they want to. Mm-hmm. But yeah, so that's my big sea monster story right there.
See, this is the type of stuff I need to get in my wheelhouse so I can so I can tell stories like that whenever I do shows like this. I still have like almost nothing to talk about of my own, like experience wise.
Well, okay. All right. You say you have nothing to talk about your own. Didn't you get, were you awarded Cryptozoologist of the Year or something?
Yeah. Yeah. In 2000, again in 2017. Yeah, I got, Lauren Coleman has obviously the International Cryptozoology Museum, and he gives out they award a Cryptozoologist of the Year. And I won in 2017. Um, and my wife still wears a shirt that says Cryptozoologist of the Year that has my face on it. So, and Tommy had a onesie that he was able to wear for about a year as well.
Sweet.
He eventually outgrew, and then I have friends in Kentucky who wear that same shirt. So it's like a what do you call it if it's like a meme, but it's an in joke. I mean, that's basically like what it is. Yeah, I don't know.
Well,
I also don't know. I don't consider myself a cryptozoologist. So like, I feel that for I feel that there is a scientific aspect to cryptozoologist to that term that I am not a part of. You know, like I'm collecting, to steal a phrase from my friend Shannon LeGros, I'm collecting stories, and that's about it. Like and at the end of the day, people call me, I'm a filmmaker, sure, but like end of the day, I'm really just a storyteller. So, you know, like I get it. Like I get the reasons why, and I've heard it over the years. I just think there's probably people far more deserving of the term cryptozoologist.
so like a cryptozoologist, I mean, there's different facets of that. You're the documentarian of cryptozoology. You probably interview and talk to, or maybe your wife interviews and talks to more people than most cryptozoologists do all year, right?
Yeah.
Just because
Well,
y'all are doing your research.
sure. Yeah. I mean, I'm trying to figure out. I just had an interview the other day, and I was trying to remember how many interviews we're at. And I mean, if you think of UFOs and just the two on the trail of that I've been a part of, so on the trail of Bigfoot and on the trail of UFOs, between the two of them, there's like 55 interviews, and that's two projects out of 14 or 13 or 14 now. I mean, you know, if it's got to be pushing 200 plus people in 5 years that we've interviewed. Oh, there's
Right.
trouble.
I know.
Is she gonna correct you on the halibut thing?
I don't know. Or no, I think that's the ding, ding, ding thing. Sounds like, oh, look, sounds like a halibut spawning me. Well, he wasn't spawning with me. I know that. I went straight to the surface. I wasn't having none of that.
The thing about your story that I hear a lot of stories, none of them, not very rarely do people telling me their encounter story. Does it like elicit any kind of reaction in me? And your story's creepy to me. There's something about being underwater and not really knowing what's coming at you or what could come for you. And there's a helplessness to being underwater too. Yeah, you can swim, but you're gonna get, you know, chased down by anything that really wants you down there, except a halibut. So there's something unnerving about that just in general. And that might be why the lake monster and like aquatic monster stuff appeals to me to begin with is
Well, when I was in Alaska, I did a lot of what would be considered blackwater diving, diving under ice, but crushed up ice where it's like a slushy. So you couldn't see anything. You had to work completely off of what you could feel. And the same thing with what I did, you know, here in Central Texas, as far as body recovery, in some of the areas that we go into.
Fun.
There's no visibility at all. Everything's gone by touch. So yeah, it's creepy.
Is this the only? I mean, it might be your only experience, but have you ever heard anyone else having like any kind of underwater like encounter story?
So, yes, but most of the people that I talk to about that, you know, our adult brain will automatically equate it and, you know, put it into a category of what you think it might be, and you dismiss it just because it's so creepy. But Yeah, in a lot of the deep diving that some of my friends that I have that are saturation divers, and they will go down for an entire month and stay, compressed. And when I say go down, they'll do dives back and forth from the boat, but they stay under pressure the whole time.
Did you
and
hear
there's all
this?
kinds of creepy, weird things, right?
Did you hear this story that the Russians put out about an encounter with like some sort of underwater monster beneath the ice in like was it Antarctica or something? I mean,
Yeah, where they actually fought it.
yes,
They fought with it. Yeah,
that needs to be a movie that I probably need to
it
make at
does.
some point.
Was it Leviathan? And
Yeah.
there's a few of those.
Yeah.
Real quick, for those of you who are watching, you're watching the Detective Diaries. I am here with Seth Breedlove. He is cryptozoologist of the year in 2017. He's a filmmaker. He's a director. He's a producer. He's an all-around cool guy, researcher. And if you have any questions at all, you can go right down there and go into the comments and write a short question. And I say short question because I can't read real long questions. And we will try to answer your questions. Also, if you would like and share this broadcast, you would not believe how much that helps me. It really gets the word out and helps me out a lot. Seth,
Mm-hmm.
I got to, I get one of the things that I really like about movies
Mm-hmm.
is movie posters.
Yeah.
And you have some of the coolest movie posters out there, right?
Yeah. It's across the board too. Like, so what we're looking at here are Sam Sheeran's posters. So first of all, too, just to bring up, as long as we're mentioning people, Sam in like, we keep talking about 2017, but I think this was 2016. Sam contacted me, because I think he had seen Minerva or something like that, and he had contacted me about getting involved with STM. And keep in mind, at this point, STM was so small that, like, Beast of Boy Hall had just was about to come out, and it had cost something like $600 to make. I mean, like at that point in time, we had no money.
Which one?
Beast of Boy Hall.
Cost you $600. That's it.
Well, I mean, Minerva didn't cost anything. I literally we put no money into Minerva.
Wow.
The only money that ended up going into Minerva was after the movie was done being filmed, and we got DVDs made. We put like $1,000. We ran a Kickstarter, and anyway, Sam contacted me at a point where I was convinced like any money we spent was going to bankrupt me. And Sam contacted me, and ended up doing posters for like our first 3 movies at a very reasonable rate. He probably would not want me to tell this, but the point is, like, he did that, and then we were able to, I think because of that, at least in part, like, you can't underplay the importance of like his imagery on our posters early on. So we had that look on our poster. I think that helped like establish the STM brand, and then from there we got to get, other artists started getting. My wife started doing posters, and hers are some of my favorites next to Sam's. And then on the Trail of, we have Matt Pepler doing all the On the Trail of posters, which is a very different look from Sam's. So I'm like, see, I'm a poster geek and have been for decades, for a couple decades at least. As a kid, my entire room was just littered with movie posters. So like, I've always had a minor obsession with that, and I probably put more money into creating posters for our films than I need to. It's just I really like
they're great, man. They're really great. I your Momo T-shirt.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how many photo ops I've done as a paranormal detective with your Momo shirt on, just because I love it so much. It's great.
Yeah.
Speaking of Momo, Steve Manley is like, what part of Missouri was Momo supposed to be from? He remembers that from when he was a kid.
Louisiana, Missouri. So it's right on the border with Illinois. And when we were there, when we were shooting Momo, Lynn, by the way, is going to lose her mind. She really wants us to be talking about Mothman. And anyway,
It's a teaser.
Right, Louisiana is like right on the border with Illinois, and it sits on the Mississippi River. It's honestly an adorable little town. mildly creepy and kind of like it's going through a very rough time. When we were there, it was a very depressing time. Actually, half the town had flooded. The entire downtown was underwater while we were filming there.
Oh, really?
Yeah, yeah. But the Momo stories happened in the 70s, and don't ask me for a year because all those 70s Bigfoot stories have gotten jumbled up in my head, and I'm past the point where I can differentiate one from the next year wise. But yeah, that story is one of my favorites, and Momo the movie is one of my favorite. It's one of the things I'm most proud of anyway that we've done at STM. I adore the entire process that went into making that movie, almost as much as the Bell Witch movie that we're wrapping on.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I was looking at it. The Bell Witch is not out yet, right?
So because of COVID, I mean, honestly, I can't even blame this on COVID. Our entire year was sort of geared around Mothman, and then putting out Bell Witch to coincide with the 200-year anniversary of John Bell,
Right.
which is in December. So Bell was originally supposed to film in like June and then got pushed into August. But we have, as far as my end working on Bell Witch goes, I'm done. So I'm moving on as of today, actually. I started working on some other stuff that we haven't announced yet. We're launching like this whole members only section of the STM website, and so I'm starting to create content for that in addition to all the other stuff. We already have like On the Trail of Bigfoot the Journey sitting in the bag, so I got to edit that too. But yes, Bell Witch is coming later this year. The trailer just got completely wrapped yesterday, and that trailer is going to blow some minds. It's a very different look from the rest of our films. And it is kind of like what I always wanted in a supernatural / haunting / ghost, quote unquote ghost movie.
Right.
That is what Mark of the Bell Witch is. It's like a love letter to Robert Wise movies, and it's I'm pumped because it's very unnerving. It's going to be it's definitely the scariest or creepiest, most unsettling STM movie by a mile.
Really?
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to it.
I should have sent you the trailer just so you could watch it before we did this, but honestly, we just locked on it at about 7 p.m. last night. The sound design just
really
got done last night. Yeah. So the movie's done. We're now in the process of starting to shop it for distribution. So I don't have a release date for the general public. All I can tell people is that if you back Kickstarters at the beginning of the year, you're going to get the projects way before everyone else. Like our Kickstarter backers saw Mothman Legacy, 2 weeks ago now, and the Mark of the Bell Witch will go out to Kickstarter backers in the middle of December. So regardless, even if Mark of the Bell Witch doesn't come out to the general public until like March or April of next year, our audience is getting it in December.
That's awesome. That's cool. Well, I know Lynn is like you said, all wrapped up on the Mothman thing. When we were up in Ohio, we really didn't have enough time. We went up there a couple of days early and stayed maybe a day late, I think, afterwards. And but we did run over to the Silver Bridge, and we did do that primarily, probably because of your movie.
Wow.
But Lynn really had a good time doing that. How much time did you end up spending there when y'all were shooting the original one?
Ooh, so I've spent more time in Point Pleasant than any other town that we filmed in, to the point where we've talked about moving to Point Pleasant. So Point Pleasant's kind of like my home away from home at this point. During the original movie, there were 5 shooting trips at least. Keep in mind, it's only about 2.5 hours from where I live, so it's not bad. Like we can drive there, film, and come back. So yeah, on the Mothman of Point Pleasant, I would say it was like 5 or maybe 6 trips back and forth. But there were multiple trips throughout that same year, just because we go down there a lot. So we do all sorts of stuff down there. It's a lot, honestly, as a filmmaker, as a documentarian, it's way easier when I can go to a place like Point Pleasant, and because I can make contacts there, we can drive back like almost immediately if we need to. If like someone comes up, like a witness comes up and they're like, hey, I want to do this interview, I can turn around and drive back down there. So it's different from someplace like Louisiana, Missouri, where I'm 9 hours away, and for me to get there
Right.
is difficult. But I also am just, I think I am in love with West Virginia because we're doing this on the Trail of UFOs Dark Skies next, and that's entirely set in West Virginia. So we spend a lot of time there.
That's awesome because I threw the pictures up there, the beasts, but you don't just cover that, you also cover some water and things from the sky, things from the air, things from possibly outer space, right?
Yeah. We have. People keep asking me how many movies we have, and I think it's 10. I think Mothman Legacy makes 10, but I've already wrapped on Bell Witch, so in my head it's 11 that we've moved on to, and we know what we're making for the 12th. So I'm kind of like mentally preparing for that one as well. And we're launching 5 on the Trail of projects next year. So technically STM's putting out 6 movies in 2021. But yeah, I'm
assuming none of those are going to be in Texas.
The thing about Texas is I keep wanting to go back there, and we were supposed to do On the Trail of UFOs in Texas. Because I really wanted to do something about the Cash Landrum encounter,
right?
And because that's like one of my favorite UFO stories, and it's not going to happen. We're doing West Virginia for Dark Sky, and then we're doing Night Visitors, which is Colorado. Now, season 3, if there's a season 3, we'll see what happens. At some point, I'm going to get back to Texas, and at some point, I'm going to go back to like Arizona, and we're doing Utah and all these places out west. It's so difficult to get out there and get a crew out there and do it like affordably on the budgets that we're working on. Because despite what some people seem to think, we do not have millions or even thousands of dollars to throw at these movies.
I might be able to pull a crew together for you. I'm working on it. We've got one guy watching tonight. He's silent tonight, but he's watching.
I gotta drag my buddies out there though. Otherwise I'm on my own. It's scary in this big world on my own without Zach and Jason to protect me.
Speaking of UFOs, let's watch the Kecksburg. So hold on a second.
Yep.
There are places in the world whose mysteries call us to come and see for ourselves, whatever the human toll might be. Places like the Chestnut Ridge.
Kecksburg, to me, seems like it was almost a catalyst for people becoming comfortable enough to share their experiences.
I can picture it, in my head, the people coming in, people keeping quiet about things, and I'll never forget that. It's something that sticks with you.
And there's certain areas where sometimes you get more activity than others, but the one area, of course, that year after year we seem to get more than normal activity is areas along the Chestnut Ridge. And I think we're dealing with something that's very strange and unusual, and right now beyond our scientific understanding.
But do I really want to know if I did do that? Would it be worse than not knowing?
This window opened up in this black darkness, almost like it was light projecting out of it. This thing went in, this window shut.
If it wanted to and it swooped down, I'm not saying it's going to pick you up, it'll pick you into pieces and take those pieces away.
Love it. So you mentioned earlier you don't do too much water stuff, but you do beast, you do things in the air. But as far as the UFOs, what's the one that you really enjoy the most or that intrigues you the most?
You mean topic wise? It's Bigfoot. Like I can't, it should be obvious by now that no matter what we do, like I always inevitably come back to Bigfoot. So, I mean, the thing of it is, Bigfoot is a different type of topic for me, and it's one where you can come at, you can come at it in this localized sort of fun urban legend manner, like we did with something like Momo, or you can come at it in like a really serious, biological, documentary about the history of the subject, like we did with on the trail of Bigfoot. There's more avenues for me to come at that subject from, and also, like, end of the day, the Bigfoot topic is one of the reasons I go out in the woods so much. Like you just have there's a chance that every time you go into the woods, maybe you'll have an encounter with something. And
the more you're out there, for sure.
Yeah, and I still don't know that I believe that Bigfoot's real all the way, but there is something to be said for how much I rely on that topic to really get me out into the woods. And that's kind of like on the trail of Bigfoot, the journey, the one that's coming out next March. That's kind of the focus of that, is like how so many of us, especially following the COVID lockdowns and everything, really our first time out in nature again was because of Bigfoot. So that's, it's Bigfoot. Flatwoods Monster I always come back to. I really love that story. And then obviously Mothman I come back to quite a bit as well. So those are kind of like my trifecta. But I also set something like UFOs apart from those subjects. I mean, unless there's a direct overlap, like with Flatwoods, I kind of consider UFOs a different topic altogether.
The Kecksburg thing always kind of got me. There's a few events that happen in the United States that are extremely interesting, and they all could reflect on the Cold War. But the Kecksburg incident always intrigued me, along with Roswell and a couple of others. But
yeah, and the thing about Kecksburg that's cool is it happened where it happened. So many people get really like focused on that like crashed UFO side of that story, and frankly, like I don't think it was like something otherworldly that crashed there. I think it was more than likely some sort of experimental something, or like a
well, that could be your little secret then.
Yeah. But the fact that it happened on the Chestnut Ridge and then sort of acted as like this way for people who had been experiencing things along the Chestnut Ridge for decades to actually be able to open up about their encounters is really interesting to me. And just the fact that like so much weirdness has taken place along the ridge, and the Kecksburg incident is just the one that everyone knows about. Like everyone knows about the Kecksburg incident. And there's good reason. I mean, it's a really fascinating story, but it's just one aspect of what went on, on that ridge.
Yeah, the funny thing is if you sit down with some paranormal investigators that are open-minded and you start talking about Bigfoot, it goes into just natural ape-like creature to a spiritual creature to a possible UFO to a dimensional being to a time traveler to all this, and it explains why we can't find him, why we can't find the fur, why we can't find the scat or whatever. But it's really intriguing because there's too many stories going back, hundreds of years of these big hairy men.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's one of the reasons. That's something we have with Bigfoot that we don't have with other cryptids, is that there sounds like there's a friggin' hog gang outside of my office downtown here, like revving motorcycles. So that's what that
I can't hear it.
Okay, good. Yeah, that like there's this. It goes back. I mean, as far as like newspaper reports, we have newspaper reports from the early 1800s. We have oral history that tells us, there's something like a Bigfoot in America long before that.
Right.
And that's something. And what's really intriguing about all that is the behavioral characteristics of those things are similar to what we hear today. And you just wouldn't expect to hear that if these stories are all made up.
Right.
There's too much. There's too much history there to make me sort of like shrug the whole subject off entirely.
Now, Lynn was asking if you had ever spoke with Bob Gimlin.
I've hung out with Bob a few times. Once in Montana, and then again out in Washington a couple years ago. Actually, right after I had finished filming some of my On the Trail of Bigfoot stuff, and that was right after he had his health problems.
Okay.
Literally like the week after.
Oh wow.
That I was with him, so he wasn't on top of his game. But every time I've hung out with him, he seems like a really cool guy. Very, very believable. I don't know what I personally think of the Patterson Gimlin film, but
very down to earth, good cowboy, right?
Yeah, just a good dude.
Yep.
And super interesting. Like someone, I've always found it a shame there isn't like a really, really in-depth documentary done on the Patterson Gimlin film. Like really, go to the location, get their stories, obviously, but come at it from all angles. There really hasn't been that done yet.
Right. Well, you get to do quite a bit of traveling around. I know that just from the your shooting locations, everything. I was looking at on your. I pulled this off Facebook or whatever. Where was this?
That's in the White Mountains, and that was right around the same time last year, which is why you've got the peak foliage. Yeah, that's right on. I can't remember. I think that place is called Artist Bluff, and it's
really beautiful.
It's a really and it is a simple hike. I mean, it's kind of a steep climb, but it's really you can do that climb in about 20 minutes to get from the parking lot up to that peak, and it's a really great location. Yeah, I mean, the best part of this job, aside from the fact that I get to work with some of my best friends and occasionally I get to do shoots where my wife and son come on them. Aside from that, the best part of it is the travel, because I grew up in a traveling family. We, my parents owned a bookstore. We did book shows every weekend. And so I grew up on the road. So that is like in my blood. And that is the thing about this job that I sort of respond to the most and love about it. And I mean, in the next year, I just had to send a list out to some of the crew this past week about hey, these are the places we're going. I need to know who's in and who's out on what trips. And
right.
It's like, we've got between now and this same time next year, we've got Colorado, West Virginia, Louisiana, a lot. We're going back to the Pacific Northwest. There's the Olympic Peninsula we're going back to. There's the Lake Michigan's coming up in the next month. We're going to be up along Lake Michigan doing some on the trail of the Lake Michigan Mothman stuff. There's a lot, and I've got my eye set. So we actually will be in Texas. Between now and sometime next fall, because I want to do this. I don't have a title for it yet. And I might say this and we might end up doing something else, but I really want to do a Return to Boggy Creek style On the Trail of Bigfoot episode. So it would be, the way we're doing this On the Trail of Bigfoot now is they're full-length movies. I call them episodes because they're all interconnected. But we're doing On the Trail of Bigfoot, The Journey, and that's New York. We already shot that. Then we're doing On the Trail of Bigfoot, The Discovery, and that's the Olympic Peninsula. And then we're going to do this On the Trail of Bigfoot, something like Return to Boggy Creek style movie is what I really want to do. That would be 2022 that one would come out.
Well, that's going to keep you busy, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Well, I'm in Texas. If you need anything down here, you know where to look up.
Yeah.
One of the movies I really liked was Your Terror in the Sky.
Mm-hmm.
I think I think you did a showing of that in Michigan last year.
Yeah.
And and we've talked before, when I was I guess I was 5 or 6 years old, I had a Thunderbird fly over my head. Not a jet Thunderbird, one of the big, like an eagle or something. And being a little kid, his wingspan covered the entire 2-lane road, right?
Yeah.
From my perspective. And that was something that was I always thought was a lot of fun, because I mean, it scared me so bad I ran all the way home and told my mom that this giant bird, I just flown right over my head, and being so young, I probably didn't have a good judgment of distance and that sort of thing, but it was terrifying.
Yeah, it couldn't have been like a golden eagle, could it?
What?
Like a gold eagle, like a golden eagle.
So in Texas, we have some bald eagles down there, and we also have quite a bit of what would be turkey vultures. People call them buzzards.
Yeah.
So it could have very easily been a big bird like that. We got some big birds down here.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, we are Texas, right?
Well, yeah. I mean, everything has to be bigger, but like I've always thought that so Thunderbirds to me are like a no-brainer. Like I 100% think there are Thunderbirds. Now, what we're talking about, like if it's some, I don't know that I believe it's like some sort of undiscovered species of birds, so much as it could be anomalous, large, abnormally large sort of birds. Like I think that's totally believable. So when I ask about like the golden eagle, the only reason I do that is because there are so many reports from like Mississippi, Texas, all these places, Illinois, of these what people sort of describe as a golden eagle that is like trying to pick up a small child. So I'm just curious if that's like just a abnormally huge, version of that bird or what it is. I also find that idea terrifying because they can kind of, it's like Lauren talks about how they can come out of nowhere, and pick you up if those things exist. I don't necessarily think that the topic of like Thunderbirds is intrinsically terrifying, but that one idea, like the idea that they can swoop down and pick you up at any minute, is kind of scary.
Yeah, and if they have anything to do with anything to do with birds, as far as like an owl or something like that, you're not going to hear it coming. I've had owls buzz me before in the woods, and you hear nothing. It's just all of a sudden it's there and then it's gone. Owls
are just straight up scary. This is what we were just talking about this recently, like my friend Mark and I. So Mark Hall, who's this like famed cryptozoologist, he propagated the idea of this of the Mothman being part of a species of massive owls that live in Appalachia, and he called it Big Hoot, which is the worst. I can't imagine what he was thinking when he did it, but having said that, the idea of a 6 or 7 foot tall owl is horrifying because owls just in general are really, really creepy.
They're
so
pretty.
The idea that there could be like a 6 foot tall owl is not something I want to mess around with.
Right. Well, hey, speaking of 6 foot tall, Shay's asking, do you think you'll ever do an episode on little people? I think she threw in like a whole bunch there, Nina Rouge, kobolds, that sort of thing.
That's the only one I could pronounce.
Yeah, me too. I just skipped over it. Yeah. She's too smart for me.
You know what? Like, it's nothing. It's something I've never thought of, and we would have to find a way to like package that into something else that we could actually sell. Because like the fact is, like, there's probably not a huge audience for that, but that stuff's really interesting to me. It's like fairies. Like right. I would love to do a movie on fairies, but you're never gonna sell it. Like we have such a difficult time as it is, sort of like selling movies about monsters that people don't know. Like the behind the scenes, the stuff that people don't realize is the movies that a lot of people love of ours are probably bombs. Like Flatwoods Monster didn't make a dime.
Really?
Yeah, and people think, well, the Flatwoods Monster is really popular. It's not. Like outside of the cryptid world, Where the paranormal world, no one knows what the Flatwoods Monster is, and frankly, like, the cryptid and paranormal world aren't where we're managing to survive. It's that we're drawing in a general audience. General audiences have no idea what the Flatwoods Monster is. And Invasion on Chestnut Ridge is like that too, where it's this movie that now people really associate us with that movie, but that movie made nothing when it came out. Nothing. It found an audience. It's funny because I've had more people tell me they love Invasion than any movie we've made. But yeah, it's strange. It sucks too because those are always the topics I really want to delve into. So
Yeah.
like, Little People is interesting because I actually see some overlap too between Little People and like fairies. Like there's some similarities there. But the one I've always wanted to do is like the melon heads because there's all this melon head lore from like Michigan, Ohio. Like there's I'd love to get into that. Lake monsters are super interesting, and I think I've come up with like a way to do lake monsters, but it would almost be an anthology on the trail of movie that would be like 2 hours, and we'd be going from like Flathead Lake to.
There's a lot of lake monsters.
Yeah, there's tons, but there just isn't enough interest in the subject, unfortunately.
That's one of the things about like Central Texas. We have some legend monsters here in Central Texas, but we don't have the bodies. We don't have, they didn't kill anybody. We don't know, I mean, there's somebody saw something and they called it a name and it killed it, the farmer's chickens and that was it. And it's like, yeah, that's probably not necessarily a monster.
What you have in Texas, though, is that weird thing where the Bigfoots or the Bigfoot-like creatures, or I guess just your cryptid-like monsters, are hanging out around bodies of water. So they get associated with those places, like on a really rural level too, like legends that a lot of people haven't heard of. Louisiana's got like the Honey Island swamp monster, and Arkansas has the Fouke monster, the Boggy Creek monster, and then what is the one? There is one in Texas. What's the one with like the crud? This is gonna drive me crazy. It's not Pope Lake. It's like the goat. It's like a goat. Never mind. I'll just think about this.
Goat Man? I think you saw my shirt.
I know about Goat Man, but I can't. There's one that has a regional name, and I cannot think of what it is.
Huh.
I'll keep pondering this till it drives me crazy.
Yeah. But yeah, that's interesting thing about Texas. It seems like, the paranormal conventions here in Texas don't do well, but Bigfoot, cryptozoology type conventions do very well down here. And I think it has to do with how many people are hunters and spend a lot of time in the woods and like to drink beer and hooty hoo, in the woods.
Yeah, it's a difference in audience. End of the day, like that's all it really comes down to, and that's fine. like the I wish we could get past sort of like, it's funny because I just talked about how much I love Bigfoot, but I wish we could get past the point where that is like the prevailing. It's either Bigfoot or the Mothman. That's all anyone wants to talk about right now in like the paranormal and cryptids, and there's so much more beyond that we need to get to.
See, Lynn, there's a lot more to this world other than Mothman. She'd love for some Mothman.
See my movie though, everyone, please.
So let's throw in one more time, just because I kind of keyed in on the UFO thing. I'm right now under contract writing a Roswell book.
Awesome.
And that's really hard to do, to come up with a Roswell book that, everybody hasn't already read, doesn't already know.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of new information coming out from Roswell, but I'm just providing a different way to look at what happened. So I pulled another UFO stuff. So everybody, you're watching the Detective Diaries. We're talking with Seth Breedlove. He's a filmmaker in Small Town Monsters. You're the owner of the company?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, I created STM actually in 2013 before it was a movie. it was originally like a book proposal, and then it became a movie when I couldn't sell the book proposal. When I couldn't sell the book proposal.
Well, you've been cranking them out though, man. You're living the life I would love to live. I would much rather make films and sit and I mean, I like writing script and stuff like that, but it would be so much more fun doing what you're doing. So let's throw your UFO thing on here real quick.
What they described was 6 equidistant points of light that seemed to be attached to something over a mile wide, but they couldn't quite see what these lights were attached to. And you would hear that again by thousands of people, and they were alarmed because there's a 30-mile radius around the center of the airport called Class B restricted airspace. Anyone that comes into that airspace, especially 1,000 feet altitude that these were, must call into the tower, but no one did.
You know, if you're in charge of the airspace over the United States, how likely would you be to admit that, you don't have control over our airspace?
We have an amazing array of scientists, of military officers coming forward and either saying, yes, I've had an encounter, or, there's something much more to this topic than meets the eye and it bears further study.
You get an understanding of what the phenomenon is doing and what it's about by dealing with people that it's affected.
I remember speaking to the first abductee face-to-face. It started as a one-time event until she started having reoccurring dreams that other things had happened.
And suddenly we saw it, and it's just like they describe in books and videos. This thing's huge, and it's coming down slowly as it goes.
Here, guys.
Where at?
Look right up here. I don't have.
Oh, whoa.
Straight.
Oh, do you see that over there?
Which one?
Nobody saw that? That thing just like flew across the sky.
I think it's easier for people to come out and talk about the subject, but I really don't know if that means that a lot of people still feel that it's okay to do so. Some of these people, they don't sleep right. They're obsessed with finding out more and more and more, and it's something that some of these folks, it's all that they do. It's taken over their lives.
Oh man, that
you like that build up?
That event got canceled too. The one at the end.
Oh,
of that.
did it?
Yeah.
So, in this, Cat Ward from Australia just posed a question. As far as what piqued your interest in cryptids, and what theory do you think is most viable for existence? In other words, aliens, Bigfoot, dimensional beings, UFOs, what?
What piqued my interest was just that there were sightings of a creature outside of the town I grew up in Ohio called Bolivar. There was a nearby town called Minerva, and I had grown up hearing about the Minerva monster case from the 1970s, and that was like what piqued my interest, was this story about this family that lived in Minerva that was seeing this 7-foot tall hairy creature behind their house that eventually strangled and killed their dog. It was investigated by local police. It was featured on news stories around the world, and then in the present had sort of been completely overlooked and forgotten by the town of Minerva. That was really what piqued my interest was how Minerva had just sort of let that story go and moved on from it, more so than like the monster story. But that was really what piqued my interest. I didn't have like a sighting or anything of my own. And it took me a long time. It took me like a couple of years of really like listening to podcasts, reading books before I got past this is like this approach where it was more, I think mentally I was like, this is just silly fun. Like I don't think any of this is real. I got past that after a couple of years and started really looking at like, well, what might be the reality of some of this. But I don't have a blanket theory as to what might be the most viable,
well, I can say
origin point for all these things.
From my perspective, it's going to be something in the water. We're finding new stuff all the time in the water, and for sure, for me is in the ocean, the deep ocean, the large ocean, and there, in some of these areas, I don't see why something like a Bigfoot couldn't stay hidden up in up in Canada and Alaska and certain areas, Washington and Montana, if they really wanted to stay away from everybody.
Oh, yeah.
I just don't see them propagating. I don't see them being able to continue their line, but who knows?
Yeah, I don't see. My thing is, I think people want to have sort of a simple answer to the existence of something like a Bigfoot, and I think they start reaching for things like interdimensional, and I just don't buy it, because of what I've experienced and what most of the witnesses I've spoke to are sort of are describing. It's not that weird. I don't know how to put that. Like it's not weird. It's an undiscovered creature. It's a being that acts and behaves like an ape, and really just comes across as a monkey in the woods to me.
Right.
It gets weird when you get into some of these other topics.
So Robert is asking, which one of your films are you the most proud of, that you really enjoy the most?
Man, I don't know, because a month ago I was saying Momo, and I still am really proud of Momo. Momo's unique because it was like this huge team effort. Okay, that was the wrong way of putting that. Every STM movie is a huge team effort, but like it was a team effort in the fact that every single member of the crew was putting something into the creative process. So it was co-written by three of us. It was co-written by me, Mark Matsky, and Jason Udis. It's got a lot of like contributions from. We had a huge team meeting very early on in the pre-production, which we've never done. There's never been like a huge team meeting where everyone sits around and like tosses ideas.
Right.
And we did that with Momo. And so Momo, I'm really proud of, just because we came up with this insane idea and then we did it. Like we executed exactly what we thought we were going to try to do. So Momo, I am really proud of. I'm really proud of Bell Witch so far. Really, like, it was a daunting task, because we're talking about a movie where I can't fall back on witness stories to sort of resuscitate the movie if we're getting boring or something. Like if the subject matter is kind of starting to wane, we can usually rely on, okay, well, let's get a witness in here and we'll spice this up. And you can't do that with Bell Witch, so we had to come at it from a completely different perspective. And I think we've pulled it off. I'm really excited to start showing that movie to people. So, but then again, I look at stuff like On the Trail of Bigfoot, and I shot On the Trail of Bigfoot 6 episodes, almost 3 hours long, entirely by myself. And I'm like, okay, well, maybe I'm proud of that one as well. But I don't know. It's one of those. It's probably one of those three. It's going to be like On the Trail of Bigfoot. It's going to be Bell Witch, or it's going to be Momo. Those are the three that I really am excited.
So speaking of Bell Witch should be out next March around, you think? February, March?
I have no idea.
Okay.
It could honestly be out in January. It wouldn't surprise me if it's out in January. I'm hoping it's out in January or February.
And on the Trail of Bigfoot, you're going to have out next
that is
year.
March. That is going to be March. And then so the schedule as of right now is kind of in flux, but we do know, on the Trail of Bigfoot in March, on the Trail of UFOs is hopefully going to be an early summer release, and that's going to be probably 1 month. It's going to be on the Trail of UFOs Dark Skies, and the next month it's going to be on the Trail of UFOs Night Visitors, and then we're going to have on the Trail of Bigfoot the Discovery coming sometime probably later next year. And then in between all those, there's going to be on the Trail of the Lake Michigan Mothman, and then we're going to release the 12th Small Town Monsters feature film, which is called Howl of the Rougarou.
Cool. Dude, we've been talking for an hour and 1 minute. I really appreciate you coming on and spending the time with us tonight.
Yeah.
Because I know you have stuff to do, and it meant a lot to me for you to do this. If there's anything I can ever do for you, please don't hesitate to contact me.
Cool. Yeah. Thanks for having me. It was a lot of fun.
Can you tell everybody where they can find you?
Smalltownmonsters.com. The Mothman Legacy comes out October 20th, so in like a couple weeks, and that's going to be our first like big huge release where it drops on all platforms day and date, including like VOD on cable networks. It's going to be on VOD and all that kind of stuff as well. So it should be available everywhere when it drops on October 20th. So if you want to support STM, watch that movie and then go and leave it a review on Amazon, because
yeah. Also, you can find all of his, I think just about all of his stuff on Amazon, right?
Yeah, every single title is available on there. We did just lose rights to put up our movies on Prime for some reason, for some indistinguishable reason from the corporate behemoth that is Amazon. But a lot of our movies are on Prime, like both On the Trail of Bigfoots are on Prime. Terror in the Skies, Bray Road, Flatwoods, all those are free on Prime. And then a bunch of the other ones are, rental and purchase.
Man, I can't thank you enough. I really appreciate it. And hopefully we will see you maybe in Michigan next year.
I have no idea. That'd be awesome. Yeah.
I don't know either. But hopefully I'll see you someplace next year.
Yeah.
And thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks for having me, man.
All right. All right, everybody. That was Seth Breedlove, filmmaker, Small Town Monsters. He's got 11 or 12 out. I can't remember if it's out or not. I recommend them all. I love Terror in the Sky. I like the animation and stuff that they did for the reenactment stuff on it. And you can find him at smalltownmonsters.com. You can look at Seth Breedlove on Facebook. Also, you can see this again, or you can recommend this again if you go to my YouTube channel, the Paranormal Detective Greg Lawson YouTube channel. And if you would like and share this broadcast, you would be helping me out greatly. If there's anything I can do for you, shoot me a message on Facebook. Also, if you have any other comments or questions, you can post them here. Seth and I will be monitoring that and try to answer your questions when we can get around to it. Eddie Van Halen, good ride, man. Eddie died today, and he was a big part of a lot of people of my age's life. He was a cool guy, and we're going to miss him. So check out Small Town Monsters, and I hope to see you guys again next Tuesday at 6 p.m. Central Standard Time, where I will be back with another episode of the Detective Diaries. Thanks, y'all. See you later.